Coco Gauff was winning matches, breaking records, and making history. But did the tennis world actually appreciate what she was doing? Long before Coco Gauff became a Grand Slam champion, she was already carrying enormous expectations. She was incredibly young. She was competing against experienced professionals. And every time she stepped onto the court, the spotlight followed her. But now, looking back at those early WTA years, there's a bigger question. Was Coco Gauff's success simply expected instead of truly appreciated? Because when a teenager performs at an extraordinary level, people can quickly forget just how difficult that achievement really is. And Coco's journey shows exactly how that can happen. Today, we're taking a closer look at her early WTA years, the expectations surrounding her, and why the phrase "taken for granted" has become such an interesting part of the conversation. Tennis. Coco Gauff's explosive arrival. Coco Gauff didn't enter professional tennis quietly. She arrived with massive attention. As a teenager, she was already being discussed as one of the biggest young talents in the sport. Her breakthrough at Wimbledon made the entire tennis world take notice. Suddenly, Coco wasn't simply a promising junior player. She was competing against established stars. And she was doing it on some of the biggest courts in the world. But with that attention came something else. Expectation. Once people saw what Coco could do, they started expecting her to do it again. And again. And again. The pressure of being the next big star. Imagine being a teenager and having millions of people watching your matches. Every victory becomes a headline. Every defeat becomes a debate. Every improvement gets compared to the expectations people have created around you. That's the unusual world Coco entered. For many young players, simply reaching the WTA Tour is a huge achievement. But Coco's standards became different. If she reached a big round, people wanted more. If she lost early, questions immediately followed. And that's where the idea of being taken for granted becomes interesting. Because sometimes success can become so normal to the public that people stop recognizing how extraordinary it actually is. Fire from teenage phenom to expected winner. Coco's development wasn't instant. Behind the headlines were years of training, losses, adjustments, and learning. She had to improve her serve. She had to develop her movement. She had to become stronger mentally. And most importantly, she had to learn how to handle the pressure of professional tennis. But from the outside, it can look very simple. Young player wins. Young player reaches another tournament. Young player defeats another experienced opponent. And suddenly people expect the next victory. That's the difficult side of becoming a star very early. Brain when success becomes the standard. There's a psychological difference between being celebrated for success and having success become the minimum expectation. At the beginning of Coco's career, every big win felt like a surprise. But eventually, those wins became expected. And when expectations rise, appreciation can sometimes disappear. That's true in sports everywhere. A player can accomplish something incredible, then do it again, and suddenly people say, "Of course she did it." But Coco's journey reminds us that nothing about becoming a champion is automatic. Coco had to learn from losses. One of the most important parts of Coco Gauff's development was learning how to deal with disappointment. She didn't win every tournament. She didn't defeat every opponent. And there were moments when her game was heavily criticized. But those difficult experiences helped shape the player she eventually became. Instead of allowing early losses to define her, Coco continued working on her weaknesses. That process is often invisible to fans. They see the trophy. They see the celebration. They don't always see everything that happened before it. The transformation. Eventually, the pieces began to come together. Coco became more comfortable controlling matches. Her movement became one of her biggest weapons. Her defensive ability developed into a major strength. And her confidence continued to grow. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. A Grand Slam title. Winning the US Open transformed the conversation around Coco. She was no longer simply the young player with enormous potential. She was a champion. But even then, the expectations didn't disappear. They became even bigger. The challenge of being Coco Gauff. Being one of the biggest American tennis stars comes with unique pressure. American tennis fans are always searching for the next superstar. And Coco found herself carrying that attention at a remarkably young age. There is pride in that. But there is also pressure. People want her to win. They want deep Grand Slam runs. They want trophies. And sometimes, the conversation can become focused so heavily on results that the actual journey gets forgotten. Red heart, what fans should remember. Maybe this is the biggest lesson from Coco's story. A player doesn't need to win every tournament to deserve appreciation. A young athlete doesn't need to become a champion immediately. Development takes time. There are setbacks. There are changes. There are difficult moments. What comes next? And now the question is different. Coco is no longer trying to prove that she belongs. She's already proven it. Now she's trying to build a legacy. More Grand Slam titles. More major victories. More memorable performances. And perhaps most importantly, the opportunity to define her career on her own terms. The expectations will always be there. But Coco now has the experience to handle them differently. So what do you think? Was Coco Gauff's early success sometimes taken for granted? Or do you think the enormous expectations were simply part of becoming one of the biggest young stars in tennis? Let me know your opinion in the comments. And if you followed Coco since her teenage breakthrough, tell us. When did you first realize Coco Gauff could become a Grand Slam champion? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more Coco Gauff news, tennis stories, and WTA updates. Because Coco's story isn't just about how she became a champion. It's about everything she had to overcome to get there. The expectations were huge. The pressure was real. And the journey is still continuing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.